Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is June 12th. On this day in 1994, the quiet of a Brentwood, California evening was shattered by a brutal double homicide that would go on to become one of the most infamous cases in American criminal history. Former NFL star O.J. Simpson's ex-wife, 35-year-old Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, 25-year-old Ronald Goldman, were stabbed to death outside of her condominium. What followed wasn't just a murder investigation. It became a cultural earthquake, a televised courtroom drama, and a national conversation about race, power, and justice. Today, we're going to revisit the night of the murders, explore the forensic evidence, unpack the investigation and the trial, and examine the long-lasting impact of a case that still divides opinion decades later. Let's get started. Sunday, June 12, 1994 started off as a typical summer day in Los Angeles. Nicole Brown Simpson had spent the morning preparing for her daughter Sydney's dance recital. Her ex-husband, O.J. Simpson, attended the recital as well. By all accounts, he kept his distance but remained civil. That evening, Nicole joined her family and friends for dinner at Mezzaluna, an Italian restaurant nearby. Ron Goldman, a 25-year-old waiter and aspiring actor, wasn't Nicole's server that night, but he had become friendly with her over the past few weeks. After Nicole's mother left her glasses at the restaurant, Ron offered to drop them off at Nicole's place on his way home. Nicole ended up leaving the restaurant around the same time, stopping briefly to pick up ice cream for her children, Sydney and Justin, who were home with her that night. Then, between 10:10 and 10:15 p.m., neighbors reported hearing the sound of Nicole's Akita dog barking, a sound that would continue for nearly an hour. Around 11 p.m., a neighbor found the dog wandering the streets with blood on his paws. Minutes later, a grisly scene was discovered outside of Nicole's front door. Nicole was found lying at the base of the stairs, barefoot, still in her black dress. She had been stabbed multiple times, with her throat slashed so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. Just feet away, Ron Goldman lay dead in a nearby garden, also stabbed dozens of times. Nicole's children were asleep inside. The LAPD arrived within minutes, and what they found stunned even seasoned detectives. Blood was everywhere, on the walkway, on the gate, and on the column. A black leather glove lay near Nicole's body. Bloody footprints, later traced to a rare size 12 Bruno Magli shoe, led away from the crime scene. This was no robbery. Nothing was taken. It was clear from the beginning that this attack was brutal and personal. Nicole had been struck with incredible force. The autopsy revealed a 5.5-inch gash across her throat, slicing through both carotid arteries and reaching her spine. She had 7 knife wounds to the neck and scalp and bruises on her back, consistent with being pulled by her hair. She had no defensive wounds. Ron Goldman's body, on the other hand, told the story of a struggle. He had over 20 stab wounds, mostly to the chest, neck, and abdomen. One puncture had pierced his aorta, another had severed a jugular vein. His hands and arms were slashed, suggesting that he had tried to fend off his attacker. The violence was shocking in its intensity. The killer had acted with both speed and rage. The LAPD faced a high-profile double murder and a growing media firestorm. Early the next morning, detective went to O.J. Simpson's Rockingham estate to inform him of Nicole's death, but he wasn't home. While securing the property, Officer Mark Fuhrman climbed over a wall and found a glove behind a guest house. It appeared to match the glove at the crime scene. When Simpson returned, he agreed to a voluntary interview. Detectives noted small cuts on his hands and inconsistencies in his story. Meanwhile, forensic testing was underway. Blood in Simpson's Bronco matched Nicole, Ron, and Simpson himself. Nicole's blood was found on socks in Simpson's bedroom. Drops of blood led from the Bronco into Simpson's house. A knit cap found at the scene contained hairs that were consistent with Simpson's. Fibers consistent with the Bronco were found on Ron Goldman's clothing. And then there were the shoes. Those rare size 12 Bruno Magli shoes. Simpson had denied owning a pair like that, but photos later emerged of him wearing that exact type. Despite mounting evidence, O.J. wasn't immediately arrested. But on June 17th, just 5 days after the murders, he failed to turn himself in to authorities. That afternoon, he was spotted in the back of the white Bronco, holding a gun and threatening suicide. What followed was the slow-speed police chase that was watched by an estimated 95 million people. It brought the entire country to a standstill. Hours later, Simpson returned to his home and surrendered. In the Bronco, police found cash, a passport, a fake beard, and a loaded gun. O.J. Simpson's criminal trial began on January 24th, 1995. It would last for 11 months and become a defining moment in American culture. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, presented overwhelming forensic evidence. But the defense team, dubbed the Dream Team, pushed back hard. Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, and Barry Scheck launched a multi-pronged defense. Their key strategy was to shift attention away from the evidence to the people collecting it. The first person they went for was Detective Mark Fuhrman. The defense introduced tapes where Fuhrman used racial slurs and made other derogatory comments. They argued that he had both the motive and opportunity to plant evidence. Then came the gloves. When Simpson tried them on in front of the jury, he struggled. The gloves appeared to be too small. Cochran seized on the moment and uttered the line that would go down in history. Quote, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." End quote. That line became the trial's defining moment. On October 3rd, 1995, after just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found O.J. Simpson not guilty. The reaction was immediate and polarizing. Outside the courthouse, celebrations erupted. Inside, the victims' families were devastated. Polls revealed deep racial divides in how Americans interpreted the verdict. The country was divided. In 1996, the families of Nicole and Ron filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against Simpson. This time, the burden of proof was lower. They simply needed to show a preponderance of evidence, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The civil trial lacked the flash of the criminal case, but the evidence was just as strong, if not stronger. On February 4th, 1997, the jury found Simpson liable for the deaths of Nicole and Ron and awarded the families $33.5 million in damages. Simpson claimed he couldn't pay, and the family spent years trying to collect. In 2006, they were awarded the rights to Simpson's unpublished book, If I Did It, which was a hypothetical account of the murders. They retitled it, If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer, and published it as an ongoing reminder of their pursuit for justice. In 2008, O.J. Simpson was arrested for armed robbery in Las Vegas and sentenced to 33 years in prison. He was released on parole in 2017. He died of prostate cancer in April 2024 at the age of 76. The murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman sparked national conversations that we're still having today about race and justice, celebrity and accountability, domestic violence, and systemic failure. Nicole had tried to escape abuse. She had called the police, filed for divorce, and told friends that she was afraid. Her murder forced the country to reckon with how the legal system fails even privileged victims of domestic violence. And Ron was just trying to return a pair of glasses. He became an unintended victim of brutal violence. The Simpson case changed how trials are covered, how DNA evidence is understood, and how deeply Americans divide over issues of justice and race. And behind it all were two lives that were cut short on a warm summer night. And they're reminders that behind every headline, every courtroom drama, are real families and real pain. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this episode compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!